After my recent video about Jorge Masvidal's embarrassing call-out of Chael Sonnen and Chael Sonnen's 10-7 response, I felt that this was a good time to do my video on how Jorge Masvidal went from being a fantastic success story in MMA and one of the top fighters in terms of popularity and excitement and a big pay-per-view draw for the company, to being a fighter who nobody really cares about and people just don't want to see. People lost so much interest in Jorge Masvidal, and I'm one of them. I was one of Jorge Masvidal's biggest fans for many, many years. Especially in 2019, Jorge Masvidal really represented many things that I have loved about mixed martial arts for many years. Why? Because Jorge Masvidal grew up on the streets of Miami fighting in bare-knuckle brawls along with Kimbo Slice. Those videos are still kind of surreal to look back on given where Jorge has risen to. He was for many years a fighter who looked like he was never going to get the credit he deserved because he wasn't able to reach the top level, and he was just known as a fun fighter on the undercard who would put on good fights but couldn't achieve much more than that. And in the UFC, he was the victim of a lot of split decisions which could have gone either way. That fight against Ally Aquinta many years ago was a robbery. He should have won that. And you just got the feeling that Jorge was never going to get a lot of credit for being the veteran and the exciting fighter that he has always been in his career. That he would maybe be remembered for being inverted triangle choked by Toby Amata. That he was known as the guy who could go 5 rounds with a prime El Nino Gilbert Melendez but lose every single one of them. That he was known as a guy who could get to the rankings but not much farther than the bottom 15. When he fought Darren Till, he had been out of the cage for almost 2 years, and most people saw him as a stepping stone for the young gun to get back on track. And instead, what Jorge Masvidal did was knock Darren Till out brutally, leaving an arena of 9,000 UK fans speechless. And he cut a fantastic interview afterwards where he said in a very calm way that he comes from humble beginnings, it meant the world for him to be there, and he really enjoyed the fight, and he wanted people to respect Darren Till afterwards, and he said, I'm doing this for my kids, so I need that bonus money because I got to put them through college. I felt that this was the sign of a man who was really making the most of his opportunity. He fought a big rising star in his hometown, managed to make the most of it financially in terms of winning bonuses, and he said, I want to do this for my kids, I'm running for that title once again, and I felt that that is exactly how fighters in his position who don't put on fake trash-talking personas such as these ones.
Breaking you piece by piece, artistically breaking you.
I eat my shit whole. I don't fucking take piece by piece.
The more you talk, the bigger when
I know his mama got tickets, so
shut the fuck up about, hey, don't talk about my mom for one. Don't you ever talk about my mom. Don't you ever talk about my fucking mom. Don't you ever.
You kick her ass again, and UFC is gonna give you opportunity, you know?
You have two months to talk more, and it will be finished soon.
Hey,
Don't worry about this.
I proved already, I beat you already.
Just talk, keep talking.
Bro, your leg's got no wheels. How you gonna run from me?
How are we gonna
I'm gonna track you down. I'm a savage in there. I'll find it.
Down,
Look,
I never
had to chase pussy in my life on December 30th. I ain't doing it. I don't have to.
What are you talking about?
What are you talking about?
Oh, brother, this guy stinks!
When Jorge Masvidal fought Ben Askren, once again he was brought in as the opponent to make the more talked about fighter look good. But it turned out to be the exact opposite. And Dana White has spent years talking about how fighters, if they want to be paid, need to make themselves the ones that fans want to go out and pay for. They need to make themselves attractive. They need to make themselves talked about. And Jorge Masvidal did that within 5 seconds. He had earned the right to be paid. He had earned the right to be in discussion for big fights. He had earned the right to be talked about by millions and millions of fans. That will forever go down as one of the greatest moments in history where a fighter who had spent decades fighting for respect, trying to get the notoriety he deserved, finally getting it within less time than it takes to cross the street. When he fought Nate Diaz, I could not have been a bigger fan of both men. Yes, the BMF title was unnecessary, but I loved the fact that a non-title fight was headlining Madison Square Garden. This fight did close to 1 million pay-per-view buys, and for good reason. seeing these two veterans square off, who were known for nothing but excitement. And I really liked everything that Jorge Masvidal was doing in terms of his image. How he came dressed as a young Al Pacino playing Scarface. That in the post-fight press conference, he was drinking tequila and eating pizza. Not the most healthy thing for professional fighters to do, but given the performance he had just put on against a prime Nate Diaz, I could not have been happier that he was, again, making the most of his image without putting on a fake persona of unnecessary trash talk. He instead was just showing himself to be an absolute badass while playing the role of Scarface outside of the octagon, and walking to the octagon with the Scarface theme was, again, incredibly exciting, and I could not have been happier with how Jorge Masvidal was making the most of his time in the spotlight. Even before the fight, Jorge Masvidal opened up about his past being on the streets of Miami, and he even brought his father in to do an interview with Brett Okamoto. And his father had a very compelling story, being a man who escaped communist Cuba, raised his family in America, did some bad things, went off to the penitentiary for most of Jorge Masvidal's life, but turned it around and is now living the American dream. Given that Jorge Masvidal was the one who had been able to help his family financially and live the American dream himself, it was a very compelling story that made you want to get invested in Jorge Masvidal's journey. You wanted to continue to see him do well because you like seeing people who weren't expected to do anything great in life. They were almost expected to just scrape at the bottom of the barrel, rise up financially and economically, and make a legacy for themselves. You wanted to see Jorge Masvidal achieve that because his story was not just very humble, but it was very compelling. And the fact that he was willing to open up about this part of his life just endeared him more to many, many fans, which is why he became a big star. But what I loved about Jorge Masvidal disappeared, unfortunately, after that incredible run he had in 2019. He became everything that he had criticized about MMA for years. Fighters getting undeserved opportunities without fighting the best fighters in the world and earning their opportunities at the title. He became the villain in a way.
You either die a hero, or you live long enough to see yourself become the villain.
That sums up my feelings towards Jorge Masvidal perfectly. After losing to Kamaru Usman, a fight which he took on very short notice, he said that he was not going to fight Colby Covington because Covington had just got finished by Usman, whereas Masvidal had just got grinded out in a fight that he took on a short notice. And while I sort of agree with that, I was never in favour of Masvidal getting an immediate title shot. It really disappointed me because I realised that Masvidal had become a diva overnight. He was going to use his platform as a star in the UFC to abuse the system, to get title shots that he had not earned. After losing to Kamaru Usman and being pulled from the fight against Leon Edwards to set up the Colby Covington fight, he just did himself even more disservice when he sucker punched Colby Covington in the streets after the fight, despite having 25 minutes to make him pay for everything that he had said about him. His excuse is that Colby Covington insulted his kids, only he didn't insult his kids.
I lived in Maritza's house. I didn't live in your house, bitch. Maritza paid the motherfucking bills.
My house.
Your children.
Yeah, that's a good one.
Forget about your children, you deadbeat motherfucking dad. You a deadbeat. Maritza paid for our fucking shit. You're a handout little bitch. You took the GVP loan. You took fucking the Obama phone. Hey, you still got your Obama phone? You still got your Obama phone?
I never had an Obama phone.
Yeah, you fucking did, you lying-ass piece of shit. You're a lying-ass piece of shit, bitch.
All Colby did was insult Jorge's ability as a father, which, given the fact that he risked going to jail by doing this, did kind of prove Colby right. Now, I do not have sympathy for Colby Covington. Yes, he did not insult Jorge Masvidal's kids, but he has insulted other people's family members. He said this about Leon Edwards' deceased father. He also, before the Jorge Masvidal fight, said this about Dustin Poirier's daughter, who was, at the time, around 7 years old.
Advantage over anybody. So, Dustin, name the site, bring that wife and bring Connor's little kid, Parker. Guess what, Dustin? You name the site. Let's do it. Bring that little Jezebel of a wife and that little prop you call as a kid.
Now, if you feel the need to insult somebody's innocent child in the name of trash talk, you deserve to be punched in the face. So I do not have sympathy for Colby Covington, but I also do not respect Jorge Masvidal assaulting Colby Covington when he did not insult his kids, and he did it all in the name of them when actually it was just for the sake of his own ego because his pride was hurt. Masvidal, in my opinion, just got even worse after Leon Edwards defeated Kamaru Usman, because Masvidal saw this as yet another opportunity to throw his name in the hat for a title shot, even though it may have been the most undeserving title shot of all time. He did this interview with MMA Fighting where he just came across as extremely desperate, and it was truly embarrassing that a man who I had so much respect for was stooping to this level. Throughout the year, he got angry at Daniel Cormier for stating the obvious that he didn't deserve a title shot, and Masvidal, like an entitled child, threw his toys out of the pram and cried that he was being hard done by for people stating what everybody knew. Another thing he did in this interview was that he said very harsh things about Nate Diaz, who had exited the sport in a far better way than Jorge Masvidal did, despite losing that fight they had. And Jorge Masvidal had always been very respectful of Nate Diaz, even when Nate Diaz was complaining about the stoppage in their fight. He never had really a bad thing to say about him, other than he wanted to beat him up in a fight. However, the fact that he changed and said vicious things about him that just came across as very bitter when it had been years since their fight, there weren't really serious talks of them fighting again, and yet all these years later, Masvidal felt the need to talk down to him, when it just made him come across as a bitter old man despite winning the first fight, and he was just so desperate to keep up this tough guy image, whereas before, he didn't need to talk about how tough he was, he just showed it, and people knew that he was serious. But here, he just came across as more fake, and as Colby Covington said, phony Montana as time went on. Then he fought Gilbert Burns. Now, if he had won this fight, he would not have deserved a title shot whatsoever. It actually made Colby Covington's title shot look extremely deserving by comparison. And the mere fact that Jorge Masvidal was in the discussion for a title shot if he beat Burns, because of the likes of Ariel Helwani, it was just a further reminder of what I strongly disliked about the sport for so many years, that those with star power could abuse the system and get inserted into the conversation of title shots when they were the least deserving contenders on the entire roster. And even this fight with Gilbert Burns didn't happen when it should have, because Jorge Masvidal used the excuse of the United States midterms. And the mere fact that he acted like the midterms were something that held up his career, that he couldn't fight the best fighters in the world, and he acted like he was so much further above everybody just because of a knee that he had landed almost half a decade ago, was just further embarrassment to Jorge Masvidal's image. Then he lost the fight, and he may have lost regardless, but there's no question Jorge Masvidal would have had a better chance if he had taken his career more seriously and fought these fights when he was closer to his peak after 2019. But instead, Jorge Masvidal proved to be another fighter who fought everybody, who took on all comers when he was rising up the ranks. But once he got the opportunity to actually make money, he lost that ambition to fight the best fighters in the world. He could have fought more big fights and made more money if he showed the same enthusiasm he had throughout his career. But the fire went down as soon as he started thinking that he could abuse the system to get the undeserved shots. And it's an unfortunate reminder of how some fighters who make the sport one of the greatest to watch, those who take on everybody, those who always put on exciting performances, those who don't turn down fights, will switch on a dime as soon as money is involved and they are able to make the big bucks. So I hope you liked this video about how Jorge Masvidal went from one of the most exceptional self-made stars we have seen in recent years to an entitled diva who abused the system as soon as he started making money. Be sure to like the video and subscribe to the channel for more, as always.